that which will not go away, that which will not disappoint us, that which is perfect. And that's the spiritual world, the world of Sat, eternality. So we've gone over this, I don't know how many times. This is one of the basic principles of spiritual life, but it's amazing to me how many devotees go for 20, 30 years chanting Hare Krishna, and they still don't get beyond this anartha. And I think this is because they are not cultivating spiritual enjoyment. They're not cultivating bliss. They're not cultivating their rasa with Krishna. Instead, they're trying to fill this gap. They're trying to fill the need for enjoyment with material enjoyment. But of course, we know material enjoyment is not good for the soul because this material world is fundamentally different from the soul. So I'm not going to go over all this again. We've gone over it 1,000 times. Now the next Asat-tṛṣṇā, anartha, is desires for enjoyment in the higher planetary systems of Svargaloka. Svarga means heaven. Heavenly planets are very wonderful. They're full of all kinds of material enjoyment. Opulence, sex life, pride, good qualities of every description, even yogic and mystical powers, up to the power of Brahma to create a whole universe from the material elements emanated by Narayana. So all of these things are also stumbling blocks, especially for so-called religious people. Well, religion actually aims at attaining Svarga. It actually aims at attaining heaven. Religion is more or less material. Because the benefits of religion are temporary. The heavenly planets are temporary. They're created in the beginning of the universe. They exist until the end of the universe, and then they're dissolved. In fact, even some of the pralayas, the heavier pralayas or devastations between ages and like between the manus also destroy even the heavenly planets. And then they have to be recreated again afterwards. So these heavenly planets are not eternal, and no one can stay there eternally either. So according to your good karma, according to your previous work, you may get to stay there for some time, maybe even a very long time. But it always comes to an end. And you have to come right back to this same old planet Earth and face the same challenges and the same issues all over again. So we should not try to solve our problems by going to heaven. We should try to solve our problems by going to the spiritual world where nobody ever comes back again. That's the right solution. That's the eternal solution. And when we reach this spiritual consciousness, this spiritual existence, then we know because our existence is in relation to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the opulence of the spiritual world makes the opulence of the heavenly planets look like nothing. So we don't want to go to the heavenly planets. In fact, if we get the opportunity, we reject it. Why? Because it's not possible to make spiritual advancement on the heavenly planets. There's too much enjoyment. Too much, like it would be like trying to chant your rounds at a party where everybody is enjoying sense gratification. How can you do that? In the hellish planets, there's so much suffering that you can't make spiritual advancement. But in the heavenly planets, there's too much enjoyment. It's a constant distraction, and you can't really make a significant advancement there. The best place is the planetary system, the earthly planets, because there's not enough enjoyment, or not too much enjoyment, and not too much suffering. It's right in the middle, a little bit of both. So it's better to stay here and be a devotee and make steady spiritual progress than to go to the heavenly planets and then be inundated with so much sense gratification that you don't have time for spiritual life. Okay, and the third kind of Asat-tṛṣṇā is desires for the attainment of the 8 mystic siddhis and the 9 divine jewels of Kuvera. So these are heavenly opulences. Mystic siddhis are like the ability to become larger than the largest, smaller than the smallest. Different kinds of mystic powers like mind reading and telekinesis and stuff like this. The different yogic powers like manima, prapti, siddhis, where you can take things from far away. You can reach and take anything you want from anywhere. So these are very nice. They give all kinds of temporary enjoyment, but just like being in the heavenly planets, these exercise of these powers uses up our past pious activities, our good karma. And when that karma is exhausted, guess what happens? We lose the mystic powers. And we become an ordinary human being. And then by that time, after using all those mystic powers, oh boy, we've got some real enemies. So watch out for mystic powers. They're a trap. They'll lead you far astray. First of all, they're very difficult to obtain. You have to meditate and do all kinds of yogic processes for a long, long time. And then, during that time, you're not doing devotional service. You're not worshiping God. You're not developing transcendental love. You're developing some material qualities. Yes, they're subtle, and it's probably better than trying to get material wealth and things like that are so gross and very, very temporary. But they're still temporary. They're still conditional. They're still part of the material world. So the attainment of mystic powers is not really desirable. And if you get caught up in that, it becomes an anartha that will stop you from attaining pure devotional service. And then finally, the last Asat-tṛṣṇā, Anarthas, is the desire for mukti. Mukti means liberation. Liberation as a material desire. In this world, we're suffering. And there's 3 kinds of suffering. Suffering caused by ourself, suffering caused by other living entities, and suffering caused simply by the modes of nature. So these 3 kinds of suffering are always bothering us. We're always having to go through different trials and tribulations in this material world. So then we try to say, okay, how can I escape these sufferings? Well, I may be able to stop causing myself suffering if I get some knowledge. I may be able to escape from other living entities and go off by myself somewhere, and then they won't cause me any problem. But I can never stop just the modes of material nature from causing me suffering. I can never stop the action of time from causing me suffering. So maybe I should just get out of this material world altogether. And this is the urge for mukti. Selfish desire. I want to stop my suffering. I want to solve my problem. I want to be happy. You see? So we envision a form of liberation where we cease to exist in this material world and we go into some state of spiritual existence. And usually this is impersonal, meaning we give up our identity as an individual spirit soul and merge into the effulgence of the Lord, the Brahma Jyoti. That Brahma Jyoti is the bodily glow, the bodily effulgence of the Supreme Lord. And this is also known as Brahman. Brahman, or Brahma, is different from Brahma, which is illusion, which is what we were talking about a little bit earlier, 4 different kinds of illusion. Brahma. But Brahma is spiritual energy, oneness. So if we merge into oneness and we lose our spiritual identity, well, guess what happens? We lose our individuality and we even lose our consciousness. Because consciousness requires that there be three objects, three factors. The subject, meaning us, ourselves. The object, meaning that which we direct our consciousness towards. And the relationship. The subject and the object always have some relationship. They're never just neutral. I am a conscious living entity. I have consciousness. But that consciousness has to direct towards something. It has to reflect off of something for me to be conscious. And so what is the relationship between me and the object of my consciousness? Well, I'm the subject, and the object is the object. You see? Subject-object relationship. So without these